State Secretary Blinken said that the United States are not going to impose their democracy on other countries because expensive interventions are very costly, and Americans had tried these tactics before, but they didn't work and resulted in travesty of the American democracy. So now, according to Blinken, the United States are choosing a different tactics. They are trying to stimulate the democratic development in different countries by being a good pattern of democracy. So what's happening? Are the American vassals losing their master, or what? No, it's not about that. The thing is that any processes in the political domain have certain equivalents in the past. The world is developing not around the circle, but in a spiral order, with all social processes getting more and more complicated. So the past can show us equivalents of any process happening now. Thus, for some people, the statement made by Blinken looks like a progressive view, which is to be respected. Others say, no, America is getting weaker, and that's why it cannot afford spreading democracy all over the world anymore. I think both opinions are wrong. These two views show only one element of a bigger picture. Look, when the Soviet Union was destroyed, it became clear that the next empire to be destroyed was the United States. Although the processes on the territories of the ex-Soviet republics didn't go as expected, the global elites had to prolong the existence of the United States. It is the destruction of the Soviet Union that helped the American economy to stabilize in the 90s. But the American elites, the Clinton administration in particular, didn't take advantage of that opportunity. At present, the United States are facing serious issues with their infrastructure. They could have renovated it in 90s because they had a surplus budget, but they sent the money to financial sector, not into production. The thing is that back in late 80s, both the USSR and the USA were on the verge of economic collapse, but the Soviet elites betrayed their country and speeded up the process because Gorbachev made an agreement with the American elites and sold out his country. Gorbachev was so pressed for time selling out his country that he didn't even ask to sign any documents. So most of the concessions were made just like that, based on verbal agreements. Take Germany, for example. Gorbachev took out the Soviet troops in such a hurry that most of the military and their families could not find a place to stay back in their country for years, because nothing was prepared for that. Gorbachev tried his best to support the US with the Soviet resources and save the American economy. Despite of Gorbachev's effort, the United States turned out to be a hollow leg that used all these assets speculatively. So what did Blinken actually say? What he said was very similar to what Gorbachev used to say in late 80s. Gorbachev would say that the Soviet Union was not going to impose its model on development of other countries anymore, that the Soviet Union will stop dictating its interests to other socialistic countries. These socialistic countries would take their own decisions how to develop. The Soviet Union would not go to the third world countries, that the Soviet Union would just show a good pattern which other countries would love to follow. As a result, the Soviet Union began to lose its influence in the world. All the segments that got out of Moscow's influence immediately got into American influence. So controlling was still there, just with a different controller. Such things may also happen within one and the same state, when some authority is transferred from one ministry to another ministry, or from one agency to another agency. So Blinken is saying the same thing as Gorbachev. The US can preserve its dominance in the world only if they manage to start a war in Europe. That would help to keep their leading role in the world for a while. If a war doesn't begin, the US will suffer a lot. Look at the Trump presidency, for example. He managed to do quite many good things for the United States. When people thought that Biden will improve the situation after Trump, they misunderstood one fact. Biden came to office with a different system built by Trump. Trump broke many supranational ties, transatlantic agreements, trans-Pacific agreements, because he wanted to work for the national interests within his own country. But the current state elites in the USA still want to be the police of the world. But now the situation is different. Now America doesn't have that much resources for that. That is why Blinken has to speak the way he speaks. This is the algorithm of reformatting of the state. The difference between Blinken and Gorbachev is that the latter purposefully destroyed his country to please his American masters, but Blinken says what he has to say in accordance to the current political and economic situation. What we need to understand is that both for the United States and for the Soviet Union, the shrinking of their presence in the world arena means one thing. The country stops being a locus of concentration, of controlling. This process is inevitable, and it has begun. The US will have to go through the same processes the Soviet Union had to undergo. When Oklahoma State is planning to analyze the legitimacy of the federal laws in this state, it is just the beginning. We had the same thing 30 years ago in Baltic republics. In the USSR, it was harder because the republics got their independence encouraged by Moscow, not by themselves, but the USA is a set of states, so the process will go faster. In the Soviet Union, we had the same legislation system for all the republics, the same militia, etc. But in the US, every state has its own laws and administrations, and even police forces. So the states can survive and develop only when provided by the resources from the outside. If the flow of resources is cut, the states begin to survive singly. We do not rejoice at the misfortunes of the USA. We have gone through the 90s, and we know the consequences of the collapse of our state. So we can only feel sorry for the American people.